And welcome back to Nasrec. And this is, of course, south of Johannesburg. We are here for the 55th conference of the African National Congress. And, of course, it promises to be an interesting one. And I'm still joined by Professor Vilakazi, just looking at, what is likely to unfold, but also how does this fit into the broader context of contemporary South Africa, with the ANC at the moment still being the ruling party. But since 1994, and all things being equal and comparatively over the years up until the last general election in 2019, the ANC had lost 15 percentage point in electoral support. So that in itself is telling. But of course, what's going to happen here over the next few days is going to be equally important, because will the ANC be able to turn around its own fortunes as a party, or will it continue to lose a grip on the South African electorate and basically be swept to the side? And Prof. Vilakazi, just taking a look here at what's going to happen in terms of the voting, the delegates that are in attendance here. The KwaZulu-Natal delegation, they of course are the biggest grouping. So we have 4,250 delegates in all, and they are comprised of 877 from KwaZulu-Natal, 613 will be coming from Limpopo, and then 684 from the Eastern Cape. Gauteng has 502 voters. Mpumalanga, their delegation is 390 strong. Northwest 361, the Free State 301, Western Cape 283, and of course the Northern Cape 239 voters. Those are the voters who will be coming through as delegates from the various provinces. Then we also have the leagues, and we know they have not really been functional, and therefore we'll talk about them at a later stage, but they also will be afforded voting status at this Congress, but we'll talk about that in just a short while. So just coming back to the African National Congress and the fact that it seems to be losing its grip on society in terms of just, holding on to the electorate. What do you think is in the main the reason for that? Is it the internal wrangling, or is there more to it?
Good morning again to viewers at home, Sakina, and to you. There's so much happening. If you just have to, perhaps let's go back, in history. Look at when the ANC came into power in 1994. We were a particular type of society as South Africa. We were all galvanized towards the liberation movement, possibly united around the United Democratic Front, and of course wanting something that is almost similar, which is freedom from racism, right? Freedom from apartheid. So the majority of South Africans, civil society structures, constituencies within various communities of South Africa were mobilized, highly sensitized, highly conscientized. And when we transitioned under the leadership of President Nelson Mandela, South Africans were almost united, right? I would say the black majority was almost united, and we had about 60+% of the white population also saying, yes, let us do power share. And we move forward to that. The promise of a better life is something that was envisaged with that transition. But what happened is actually something different. We started seeing signs of an ANC that is failing to deliver its promises to the people. Issues of housing, lack of service delivery, issues of jobs, just rising unemployment rates, the issue of the gender-based violence and femicide, people being raped and killed and murdered in the name of love, in the name of gender. And that has not changed since 1997, 2002, 2012, 2017. And now we are here at this conference, Sakina. So you have seen an image of an African National Congress that has been with each conference really going down, people losing hope, people losing faith in the ANC. Every election that has happened since 1994 was saying, perhaps the next one will be better, perhaps the next one will be better, but nothing has happened. Instead, the strata of citizens, of poverty is saturating in communities. We have a large numbers of graduates that are not employable, although they have qualifications. And then you've got people that have got skilled type of education, or also not employable and not being absorbed by the labor market, Sakina. And you are just having a violent society, because of the levels of stress that we are seeing in communities, people resorting to all kinds of things, violence, substance abuse, alcohol, and so on. And you are seeing now deeper fragmentation even within family structures, right? These are families of people, by the way, we must remember, who have been in the United Democratic Front, in the front line of the movement. And the younger generation are people who are probably grandchildren and grandsons of that generation who have inherited a particular type of a system from the African National Congress. So now you are seeing people who are saying, we went to the forest to fight and we came back home, those who went to exile, to a particular type of hope. People have lost their loved ones during the struggle, whether in exile or whilst at home here fighting apartheid, Sakina. I can tell you now there are people who are still battling to find bodies of their loved ones from the pain of apartheid. People who are still having to transport the bodies of their loved ones from other countries where they were in exile. So those issues are issues of that are close to the hearts of the people. But each time the African National Congress speaks, doesn't touch us those things. And these are issues, if I speak ideologically, that touch to the role of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. The TRC issue was meant to be healing the nation, right? Has South Africa healed? That's a question that, in my view, the conference should be dealing with. And most of the time when they sit, they don't talk about a possibility of a government that will actually produce national healing. Over and above, of course, national unity. So we need a government of national healing in South Africa. I don't know if that will happen at this conference again, Sakina.
So just this week, we had people, victims of apartheid, actually sleeping outside the Constitutional Court. They have been doing so for a while now because of the issue of reparations. And as you say, there are certain things that just don't seem to be top of mind for the oldest liberation movement on the continent. You would have thought these would be important. You would have thought that the files that were handed over by the TRC to the NPA for prosecution would have been important for the oldest liberation movement on the continent, now turned political ruling party. But of course, these don't seem to enjoy the sort of prominence of place, neither seemingly in the minds nor in the policy position of the African National Congress.
Exactly, Sakina, and what you have rather seen alternatively, you've seen an ANC that has taken power to build a political elite that of course has enjoyed from the tender system of the country, as we all know now, the corruption that we have been talking about so much, and compromising the real issues of the people. I mean, the big question that is facing us as we're in this conference, Sakina, what is there for a citizen? For me, that is actually of paramount importance. In the program that is going to be discussed here, the policy positions that the ANC is going to possibly adopt from the policy conference, how much of those are centering the citizen? How much of those are really moving the citizen to a place of some kind of a better life?
But how would these discussions center the citizen? Let's take Eskom as an example. One would imagine, given the absolute crisis that Eskom faces at the moment, and it's not an Eskom crisis now, it is a South African crisis. It touches everyone in this nation, individuals, businesses, even the politicians. So given the magnitude of the energy crisis, the Eskom crisis in South Africa, what sort of discussions should this particular conference be having around that?
Well, I mean, it should actually look at what are the best ways in which we can solve the problem of the crisis at Eskom. Is it about really getting rid of coal, or is it about having a hybrid system where you are bringing in renewables? Various sectors in society are actually suggesting a possible hybrid solution, because we know, Sakina, the problem of Eskom, we've been talking about this. It's obvious now that generators have not been maintained over time since the ANC took power, and the grid is collapsing, right? So you need something that is going to salvage the situation, at least in the short term. And in the short term, if you look at what we've got the sun, we've got wind, we've got, so you can bring in other forms of energy that can salvage the situation, ensure that citizens have got access to solar, ensure that citizens have got access to power, ensure that citizens have got access to various types of energy outside of Eskom, because Eskom alone does no longer have a capacity to carry the whole nation. And it's clear 2 years down the line, Sakina, will be on blackout if we do not bring in a hybrid system. So for me, I think that let us hybridize at the moment, whilst we are looking at then a medium-term and a long-term solution that says, do we get rid completely of Eskom, or do we go the climate friendly way?
Even then, has Eskom not become weaponized in and of itself? Because it's either you are for the renewables or you are for fossil fuels, and there are various arguments for and against and in between. But of course we can talk about all of that without necessarily addressing some of the key issues bedeviling Eskom at the moment. For example, whether the tender system in its current form is actually beneficial to Eskom and the country. And surely a conference such as this, whereby a lot of the people who will be participating here actually have active interest in what is going on the ground in terms of those tenders and who benefits from them, that should be top of mind for the conference, shouldn't it?
I fully agree. Sakina, the ANC must get rid of the tender system. It is not working. For South Africa, it is just saturating a political elite, and most of them are members of the African National Congress. And if we do not get rid of the tender system past this conference, we are still going to be stuck in the same cycle, right? Even if you bring in renewables, that's going to be subjected to a tender system. Who is going to gain access to that, right? Of course, there are negotiations that are happening also with business and capital in other countries to bring in investments into renewables. Who's going to benefit from those tenders? It's the same political
But what investments? Why are you and I not privy to the terms and conditions and the finer details of those agreements, of those so-called investments, of the loan agreements that our government is entering into on our behalf?
Exactly.
Why is that an acceptable situation?
It shouldn't be acceptable. It's not acceptable at all. We know, when President Cyril Ramaphosa visited the United States, for example, right, this question of renewables was at the center of that agenda. But how much of it do you know about it as South Africans? Very, very little, because these conversations are not opened up to the public to say what is it that we think. And that's the thing, right? The capability of ourselves as citizens, as thinking people that are capable of actually making ideas and bringing solutions to the country has been completely compromised by the African National Congress government. There's no conversation that happens with society. They call themselves a leader of society, but actually who makes those decisions? It's them. And I can tell you now, Sakina, if President Cyril Ramaphosa, before he entered into a conversation with President Biden's administration around renewables, if he consulted with South Africans, right, and various stakeholders around whether we should even be taking a loan from the US. I'm making the US an example. I think there are many other conversations that he's been having. You would have a different reaction from the nation, right? Mainly because we have seen since 1994, the African National Congress government has been spiraling a lot towards neoliberalism. And you just see with the macroeconomic policy programs that they've put in place, coming from the Asgisa, you can name them, right? So South Africa is sensitive to saying, even if we solve the problems of Eskom, what kind of money actually comes into our purse? Who gives the money? Who is behind it? And if you talk to citizens before you enter into those conversations, citizens will tell you, you have to be careful in terms of who you take money from. So I agree with you. I think it's those kinds of things. Even if you talk investment, whose investment is it?
Exactly. And of course, are we likely to hear that sort of deliberation here at the 55th National Congress when the delegates do break into plenaries to discuss some of the policy positions that the ANC will put forward? Who knows? But we will be bringing you blow-by-blow coverage here from Nasrec. And for now, back to studio in Auckland Park.